In this week's Seder Tetzaveh, we have one of the most famous Bala Haturim, who comments that in the Seder Tetzaveh, we find that from the very first time that Moshe Rabbeinu was born, and his name is mentioned in Sefer Shmos, till the conclusion of Zos HaBracha at the end of Sefer Dvarim, there is never ever a Sedra that presents itself without the mentioning of the name of Moshe Rabbeinu. And why indeed is his name deleted here? Explains that famed Baal Haturim, because when the Kadosh Baruch Hu had seen the creation of the golden calf that we will learn about next week in Kisisa, he turned to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, "That's it. I'm going to destroy all of them, and I'll start over with you." And Moshe Rabbeinu turned to him and said, No. If you will do that, then then remove my name from the entire history and narration of Klal Yisrael and what occurred. Because far be it from me to wish my name to be associated with the people on whose behalf I was unable to present a defense counsel and see to it that they would achieve a continuity. And indeed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds to him in Kisisa, Hinei malochi yilech lefanecha. Behold, my angel will accompany you, but not me. And Rashi explains, Ato shamati elecha melachalosam yachad. I will not destroy all of them at once, but rather there will be an amortization of their destruction over history. Whenever Klal Yisrael will be punished, I'll take somewhat of a greater portion of them because of the fate of the Egel HaZahav. Says the Baal Haturim, because Moshe Rabbeinu had said, willing to be omitted in entirety from the history of Klal Yisrael as presented us in the Torah Kadosha. Therefore, we are told, says the Baal Haturim, that at times when a person is so righteous, if he says something that can end up being a curse, even if it is reflexive in nature regarding himself, it can actually come to fruition. But then the Baal Haturim continues and he says, but why this Seder of Tetzaveh? Why is the Seder of Tetzaveh the one chosen for Moshe Rabbeinu to be omitted as if he never existed? And he explains because the Kahuna Gadola was supposed to come to Moshe Rabbeinu. And indeed, when Moshe stood for 70 days at the burning bush, arguing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, providing all sorts of reasons why he wasn't the man for the job, and ultimately says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bi Adonai shlach no biyad tishlach, send Aaron, the one that you've been conversing with all these years when I've been in Midian. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu became very angry. And he says, hello, Aaron, achicha halevi, Aaron, your brother, the Levite. I know, believe me, he'll play a role in the exodus of Egypt. And he will come to see you, and he will be only too happy to hear what you have been appointed to achieve. And he will be so happy in his heart. And Chazal point out, V'rocha, Hine, Aaron achicha halevi. Why is Aaron mentioned as being a Levi? We know that he's a Levi. Explain Chazal because he was supposed to have been a Levi. And the Kahuna Gadola was supposed to have begun from Moshe and his descendants, and not from Aaron and his descendants. And since the Parsha of Tetzaveh discusses in great detail the clothing of the Kohanim and the clothing of the Kohen Gadol that Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to have been, therefore, it was taken away from him, and his name is omitted here, says the Baal Haturim. Why? Memnei agmas nafsho. Because of the great personal distress that Moshe Rabbeinu felt over not having been selected as a Kohen Gadol. But let me ask you a question. If indeed we learn in Kisisa that HaKadosh Baruch Hu effectively says to Moshe Rabbeinu, having beseeched God, if you don't forgive them, you're going to destroy the lot of them, then wipe me out from the narration. And we're told that God said, okay, I'll amortize their punishment. Then it would appear that Moshe Rabbeinu acted correctly. And they were granted not to be destroyed because of what he said to Kadosh Baruch Hu. So why is he omitted at all, let alone from the Seder of Tetzaveh? And I believe that the reason is is because the Kodesh Baruch Hu is effectively saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, you think, Moshe, that you saved them by saying to me that you wish to be blotted out from the narration of Klal Yisrael if I wouldn't spare them at this junction in time? Well, you should know, Moshe, that you know what would have been had you not forcibly kept on turning me down in our 7 days of discussion when I called upon you to go to Mitzrayim to bring Klal Yisrael out of Egypt? What would have happened? We grow up and we're raised and we learn and we study the Torah, understanding that Moshe is the Melamed of Klal Yisrael. He receives the Torah from God. He is the one to face off against the likes of Korach and Dasan and Aviram. He is the strong-armed leader of Klal Yisrael. And Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, is the holiest of all men, able to enter the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and Yom Kippurim, to beseech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Almighty, on behalf of all of our needs. Why would it not have been so that had Moshe not fought HaKadosh Baruch Hu during those 7 days so arduously, that the very Melamed of Klal Yisrael who taught us the entirety of Torah and who stood atop Har Sinai, and indeed who negated the likes of Dasan and Aviram and Korach, why he would have been the one to enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim as the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim. And if we're told by the Orach Chaim HaKadosh and by others that would Moshe Rabbeinu have been permitted to enter the land of Israel, we never could have been banished from the land of Eretz Yisrael, and there never would have been another Golus beyond Mitzrayim. Were that to have been the case, where Moshe Rabbeinu had been permitted to enter Eretz Yisrael, my gosh, what our history would have been if Moshe Rabbeinu would have been the Kohen Gadol besides the Melamed of Klal Yisrael, and entered the Kodesh HaKadoshim on a yearly basis and turned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, standing between the staves of the Aron Kodesh in front of the Kruvim, and prayed for our behalf every single year. My, how history would have been otherwise. My, how the pages of the people of Israel would have been written so differently. And because of that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu effectively says to him, Bahade kavshe derachmana lamalach. Father always knows best. And if that's the case, and we've been raised to believe that, as we're raised by our own parents, how much more so that Avinu Shebashamayim, that our Tata in Himmel, how much more does he know what we need and what is best on our behalf? The Tetzaveh doesn't have the name of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's not simply due to Atmas Nefesh that Moshe Rabbeinu had, given the fact that he was not awarded and afforded the Kohen Gadol. But I suggest because he well understood how differently life would have been for the nation of Israel. Have a good Shabbos.